Right now, somewhere in the world, someone with less talent than you, less intelligence than you, and fewer opportunities than you is building the life you secretly want. Not because they are special, not because they were chosen, but because they understood something most people never do. The reason you feel stuck is not laziness, and it's not a lack of potential. It's something far more subtle, far more dangerous, and far more common. You wake up every day with good intentions, yet your life stays the same. Weeks pass, months pass, years pass, and slowly, without realizing it, you begin to believe that this is just how life is. But what if the problem was never you? What if the real reason most people never change is hidden inside the way the human mind works? If you want your life to feel different a year from now, do not skip this video. Do not treat this like background noise. Listen closely, because what you're about to hear is not motivation. It's clarity, and clarity is far more powerful. Subscribe now, not for entertainment, not for hype, but because understanding this may quietly change the direction of your life. Stay until the end, because the final moments of this video will matter more than the beginning. Change feels hard, not because you are broken, but because your brain was never designed for transformation. It was designed for survival. Long before dreams, goals, or ambition ever existed, the human brain learned one simple rule: avoid danger, conserve energy, stay alive. That rule still runs quietly in the background of everything you do. Your brain does not wake up each day asking how to make you fulfilled. It wakes up asking how to keep things familiar. Familiar means safe, even if familiar hurts. This is why people stay in situations they openly admit they hate. Jobs that drain them. Relationships that make them feel small. Routines that slowly erase their energy. From the outside, it looks irrational. From the brain's perspective, it makes perfect sense. The pain you already know feels predictable. Predictability feels controllable, and control feels safe. The unknown, on the other hand, feels like a threat. Not because it is dangerous, but because it cannot be predicted. When you decide to change, something subtle happens inside your nervous system. Even if the change is positive, even if it's something you genuinely want, your brain interprets it as instability. Waking up earlier, saying no, sitting in silence, pushing yourself when you're tired. These actions signal one thing to the brain: something is different. And different has always meant risk. That risk response doesn't show up as fear the way you expect. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up as fatigue that doesn't make sense. As sudden doubt, as the urge to delay just one more day. You start thinking more than usual. You begin questioning plans you were excited about yesterday. You convince yourself that now is not the right time, that you need to prepare more, learn more, wait a little longer. This is not self-sabotage. This is self-protection. Your brain is trying to pull you back toward equilibrium, toward what psychologists call homeostasis. Not happiness. Just balance, just normal. Just the version of you it already recognizes. That version may be frustrated, unfulfilled, even unhappy, but it is known. And known feels safer than unknown potential. This is why motivation disappears so quickly. Motivation feels like a surge of energy because it briefly overrides the brain's safety system. But once that surge fades, the brain regains control and asks a simple question: why are we doing this? What's wrong with staying the same? And unless you have something stronger than emotion, comfort wins. Comfort is not soft. Comfort is powerful. It is seductive. It convinces you that you have time. That today doesn't matter. That tomorrow will be easier. Comfort doesn't demand effort. It doesn't ask you to risk failure or judgment. It offers relief now and postpones consequence later. That is why it's so effective. Your brain is also wired to seek dopamine, the chemical associated with anticipation and reward. But dopamine is not released when you achieve something meaningful. It is released when you expect immediate pleasure. This is why scrolling feels effortless and productive work feels heavy. One promises instant relief. The other promises delayed growth. The brain will almost always choose the former unless trained otherwise. Over time, this creates invisible loops. You feel discomfort. You escape it with distraction. The distraction provides relief. The relief reinforces the behavior. And slowly, the ability to sit with discomfort weakens. Focus shortens. Patience fades. What once required effort now feels impossible. Not because it is, but because the brain has learned that escape is always available. This is where many people begin to judge themselves. They call themselves lazy, undisciplined, weak, but these labels miss the truth entirely. You are not fighting a lack of character. You are fighting a system that has been rehearsed thousands of times. A system that has learned one thing very well: how to avoid discomfort. The tragedy is that growth and discomfort are inseparable. Every meaningful change requires a period where the old identity no longer fits, and the new one hasn't formed yet. That in-between space feels unstable. It feels awkward. It feels lonely. And because humans are wired to avoid instability, most people turn back before anything has time to change. This is why so many people start strong and disappear quietly. They don't fail publicly. They don't collapse dramatically. They simply stop. They return to old routines and tell themselves it wasn't meant to be. What they don't realize is that nothing went wrong. The discomfort they felt was not a warning sign. It was proof that they had stepped outside the familiar. Your brain interprets unfamiliar effort as danger, even when it leads to freedom. That misunderstanding costs people years of their lives. And over time, something deeper happens. Repeated avoidance erodes self-trust. Each time you promise yourself you'll change and don't, a small fracture forms. You stop believing your own intentions. You lower expectations. You dream smaller, not because you want less, but because disappointment feels heavier than desire. Eventually, people stop trying not because they can't change, but because they no longer trust themselves to follow through. This is the hidden cost of comfort. It doesn't just steal time. It steals identity. Understanding this changes everything. Because once you see that resistance is not a flaw, but a signal, you stop taking it personally. You stop waiting for it to disappear. You stop interpreting discomfort as failure. You recognize it as the entrance fee. The moment change begins to feel uncomfortable is the moment it becomes real. That discomfort means you are no longer repeating the past. It means the brain is alert because something new is happening. And that alertness, if you stay with it, if you don't escape it, slowly rewires the system itself. Most people never stay long enough for that to happen. They retreat the moment comfort calls them back. And comfort is patient. It doesn't rush you. It just waits. It knows that if you hesitate long enough, you'll choose it again. Because comfort doesn't challenge who you are. It only preserves who you've been. And as long as that feels safer than growth, change will always feel hard. Most people believe that change begins with motivation. They imagine a moment where everything suddenly feels clear, where energy arrives effortlessly, and where discipline no longer feels necessary. This belief is comforting, but it is also destructive. Because motivation is not reliable, and it was never meant to be. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions are temporary. They rise and fall with sleep, stress, environment, and mood. Building a life on motivation is like trying to hold water in your hands. No matter how tightly you grip it, it always slips away. This is why people start strong and fade quietly. They wait for motivation to return, believing that once they feel inspired again, they will continue. But that moment rarely comes. Not because they are incapable, but because the brain does not reward long-term effort with immediate emotional fuel. It rewards comfort. And comfort is always available. The lie is subtle. It tells you that action should feel good first, that clarity should arrive before effort, That confidence should appear before movement. But in reality, it works in the opposite direction. Action creates clarity. Movement builds confidence. And effort, repeated long enough, generates its own momentum. When people say they lack motivation, what they really mean is that they are uncomfortable acting without emotional reward. They want reassurance before risk. They want certainty before commitment. But growth offers neither. Growth offers only a direction and asks you to move before you feel ready. This is where most people hesitate. They assume hesitation means something is wrong, that they need to fix their mindset, wait for a better mood, or find the perfect plan. But hesitation is not a problem. It is the cost of doing something unfamiliar. The mistake is treating hesitation as a stop sign instead of a signal. The people who change their lives understand this intuitively. They do not ask themselves how they feel. They ask themselves what needs to be done. They do not negotiate with comfort. They do not wait for internal alignment. They move first and allow emotions to follow. This is the role of discipline, and it is deeply misunderstood. Discipline is not force. It is not aggression. It is not punishment. Discipline is a decision made once and honored repeatedly. It removes choice from moments where emotion would otherwise interfere. Most people associate discipline with suffering, but what they overlook is the suffering they already live with. The constant feeling of falling behind. The quiet frustration of unrealized potential. The background noise of regret. This suffering is familiar, so it feels normal. But it accumulates. And over time, it becomes heavier than the effort required to change. Discipline is not about doing everything. It is about doing the small, necessary things, even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. Because those moments shape identity. They teach your brain that comfort is not in control. The brain learns through repetition, not intention. Every time you act despite resistance, you weaken the association between discomfort and avoidance. Every time you wait for motivation, you strengthen it. Over time, this pattern becomes automatic. You either train your brain to move forward under tension, or you train it to retreat. Most people never consciously make this choice. They drift. They respond to feelings instead of directing behavior. And because feelings change, their progress stalls. What the few understand is that consistency does not require passion. It requires structure. A system does not ask how you feel. It simply operates. You do not debate with yourself about brushing your teeth or locking the door. Those actions are embedded. Growth must become the same. A system reduces friction. It removes daily decision-making. It replaces willpower with routine. And routine is far more dependable than emotion. Waiting to feel ready is not harmless. It costs you momentum. It delays identity change. And most dangerously, it teaches your brain that discomfort is something to be avoided at all costs. Over time, this creates a gap between who you are and who you believe you could be. That gap produces shame. Not loud shame, but quiet shame. The kind that settles in the background and slowly erodes self-respect. People don't give up because they fail. They give up because they lose belief. They stop trusting themselves to follow through. And once self-trust is gone, even small actions feel pointless. This is why the lie of motivation is so powerful. It gives you permission to delay without feeling irresponsible. It tells you that you are not avoiding change. You are simply waiting for the right moment. But the right moment is a myth. It never arrives fully formed. It is created through action. Every meaningful shift in life begins before you feel ready, before confidence, before clarity, before certainty. And the people who understand this stop waiting. They act imperfectly, consistently, and quietly. They do not rely on motivation. They rely on commitment. And commitment, once made, does not ask how you feel today. The people who truly change their lives do not start by changing their goals. They start by changing the way they see themselves. Most people think behavior creates identity, that once they achieve enough, consistency will follow. But the order is reversed. Identity shapes behavior long before results appear. You do not act your way into a new identity. You act in alignment with the identity you already believe is true. This is why short bursts of effort rarely last. If the action does not match how you see yourself, the brain experiences conflict, and the brain resolves conflict by returning to what feels familiar. Not what is right, not what is meaningful, what is known. Most people say, "I'm trying to be disciplined," or "I'm trying to get healthier," or "I'm trying to focus more." That language reveals uncertainty. It implies effort without belief. The people who change speak differently, even internally. They say, "I am someone who trains," or "I am someone who finishes what they start," or "I am someone who keeps promises to myself." That identity does not wait for emotion. It dictates action. Identity is not built through motivation or visualization. It is built through evidence. And evidence comes from small, repeated actions that you keep, especially when it would be easier not to. The brain does not need dramatic proof. It needs consistency. When actions repeat, the brain updates its model of who you are. Every choice you make is a vote, not for the outcome, but for the type of person you are becoming. One choice does not define you, but patterns do, and patterns shape belief. This is why small habits matter more than big goals. Big goals are distant and abstract. Small habits are immediate and concrete. They create daily proof, and daily proof builds identity quietly. Most people underestimate the power of showing up when no one is watching. They think change is loud. They think it looks dramatic. In reality, it is subtle. It happens in ordinary moments, in the decision to stand up when you want to sit, to begin when you want to delay, to continue when quitting would feel easier. The people who change understand that willpower is unreliable, so they reduce the need for it. They shape their environment to support the identity they want. They remove friction from good habits and add friction to bad ones. They don't test themselves unnecessarily. They protect their progress. This is not weakness. It is intelligence. They also understand that identity is fragile in the beginning. Early on, the new identity has little evidence. One missed action can feel like proof that nothing has changed. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Intensity creates spikes. Consistency creates trust. You don't need to prove anything to the world. You need to prove something to yourself. And self-trust is built the same way trust with others is built. Through reliability. Through showing up when you said you would. Most people wait to feel like the new version of themselves before acting. But that feeling comes last. The few act first, without reassurance, and allow belief to catch up. This is why they do not obsess over motivation. They obsess over alignment. They ask themselves one question repeatedly. What would someone like me do in this situation? That question eliminates negotiation. It simplifies decisions. It removes emotional debate. When identity is clear, action becomes natural. Not easy, but automatic. You no longer argue with yourself about whether to do the work. You simply do it because that is what people like you do. This is also why setbacks do not destroy them. A missed day does not redefine who they are. They do not spiral. They return to the pattern quickly. Because identity is not built on perfection. It is built on recovery. Most people abandon change after a mistake because the mistake feels like confirmation of who they feared they were. The few see mistakes as noise, not signals. They protect the pattern, not the streak. Over time, something powerful happens. Action reinforces belief. Belief reinforces action. And the internal resistance that once felt overwhelming begins to weaken. Not because effort disappears, but because the identity has shifted. You stop trying to change. You simply live in alignment. This is the moment when discipline no longer feels like force. It feels like integrity. And integrity is calm. It is quiet. It does not need to announce itself. You do not rise to your goals. You fall to your identity. And once identity changes, life begins to follow. Changing your life does not require intensity. It requires honesty. Intensity is dramatic, and drama fades. Honesty is quiet, and it lasts. Most people think they need to push harder, try more, or demand more from themselves. But lasting change rarely comes from force. It comes from subtraction, from removing the things that pull your attention away from who you are trying to become. The first thing that must be reduced is noise. Constant stimulation keeps the nervous system reactive. Notifications, endless content, background sound, and information overload leave no space for reflection. And without reflection, behavior remains automatic. Silence feels uncomfortable not because it is empty, but because it reveals. It brings you face to face with the thoughts you've been avoiding. That discomfort is not a problem. It is the beginning of clarity. When you create moments of silence, even brief ones, you give your brain a chance to settle. In that stillness, you begin to notice patterns, the times you reach for distraction, the moments you want to escape, the habits that no longer serve you. Awareness alone begins the process of change, because what you see clearly, you can no longer ignore. Your environment plays a greater role in your behavior than motivation ever will. You do not need more self-control. You need fewer temptations. If distraction is always within reach, discipline is constantly under attack. If comfort is always available, growth must fight to survive. The people who change understand this. They design their surroundings intentionally. They place reminders of who they want to be in plain sight, and they remove what pulls them backward. This is not about restriction. It is about alignment. You are not depriving yourself. You are choosing a direction. Every object, every habit, every routine either supports that direction or quietly works against it. Clarity comes when your environment stops sending mixed signals. Consistency is the quiet force that rewires the brain, not intensity, not talent, repetition. The brain trusts what it sees often. When you show up consistently, even in small ways, the brain updates its expectations. It begins to believe that this is who you are now. And belief reduces resistance. 5 minutes a day may not feel significant, but it compounds. It builds rhythm. And rhythm becomes identity. This is why consistency outperforms intensity every time. Intensity relies on emotion. Consistency relies on structure. Your mornings matter more than you think. The first hour of your day sets the tone for everything that follows. When you begin the day reactively, checking, scrolling, responding, you hand control to the outside world. When you begin deliberately, even briefly, you establish agency. You remind yourself that your actions are chosen, not automatic. This does not require perfection. It requires intention. One small act done consistently is enough to shift momentum. Momentum is powerful because it reduces effort. Once movement begins, staying in motion becomes easier than stopping. Over time, something subtle changes. The struggle you once felt begins to soften. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become steadier. You no longer need to convince yourself to act. You no longer negotiate with every decision. You have seen enough evidence. You trust yourself. And one day, without marking the moment, you realize that you have become the person you once needed. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly, through ordinary choices made with consistency and honesty. This is how real change happens. It does not announce itself. It does not seek approval. It unfolds slowly, and then all at once, it is simply there. You do not need to change everything today. You do not need to fix your past or solve your future. All you need is one honest choice, made calmly and kept consistently. One action that aligns with the person you are becoming. That is enough. If you are still here, listening, that choice has already begun. Stay patient, stay steady, and walk this path quietly. Subscribe, not for motivation, but as a reminder of who you are choosing to become. Then close this video and take one small step forward. Fade to silence.